Hello students, welcome to Unacademy platform. It is the largest online platform that we have for the preparation of competitive examination. Okay, so you have daily classes here, daily live classes are there, then the structured courses are there, then there are live tests and quizzes, and on subscription you have unlimited access. You can also download Unacademy Learning app and you will have the same content there also. This is about me. My name is Amit Pratap Singh. I have been training the candidates for civil services examination conducted by UPSC for more than 5 years now. I specialize on political science optional and various sections of general studies 2 and 3. I also take essay classes and I also teach theme-based current affairs. Because of my long association with this preparation as well as guidance for UPSC civil services, and because of my experience or the multiple times facing interview stage, I also guide the candidate for personality test. So I also conduct personality development program. These are the top educators that we have on Unacademy. You can have the access to these uh, educators. You can choose the courses of your choice. These are different subscription plans. If you go for plus, you have live classes there, test series, unlimited practice, structured schedule. And if you go for iconic one, you have this very additional benefits of personal course, daily means, question answer practice, study planner, okay, and personalized feedback. These are subscriptions of different time periods. Okay. Now, if you choose any subscription, apply this very code Amit PS, you get 10% discount. Okay. Now again, this is the same thing. You can choose a subscription of your choice. Apply this very discount coupon, and 10% discount will be available to you. Again, different subscription plans. Now this is the list of the options that is available on the platform. I am going to take political science and international relations. Okay. Again, these are the different subscription plans. You can choose according to your comfort and requirement and apply this very code Amit PS to get 10% discount in all these subscription plans. So today we are going to start our course. Actually, in last two videos I discussed the syllabus that we have for PSIR, Political Science and International Relations. Today I'm actually starting the course here. Okay, so you must have seen that in the course, in the syllabus of the course, the first topic is political science. Of first topic is political theory, its meaning and approaches. But as I told you in the previous video also, that I am going to take Western political thought as the first topic in our course. This is because this particular topic is going to make you acquainted with the most basic things which are required to understand other concepts. So, for example, various basic things you are going to learn in Western political thought, which are going to be very useful in understanding topics like political theory, political ideologies, then democracy, equality, justice, etc. Okay, now in order to understand Western political thought, we actually need to understand what is political thought. Okay, so in the previous video, I have told you about the meaning of political theory. Okay, here we are going to see about the political thought. What is political thought? And what makes any political thought a Western political thought? What is so special about Western political thought? Okay, why we make such kind of differences like Indian political thought, Western political thought? Although there is no difference when it comes to political theory, there is nothing like Indian political theory or Western political theory. So, what is the meaning of this very term? Okay, before that, we are also going to study that how political thought actually comes into being. Okay, so you will see that if you analyze the history of humanity and go back to the very beginning of the time that we had, then you will realize that been continuously experimenting when it comes to the system or the order that we need to adopt in order to govern ourselves, our state of affairs, okay, our conduct, our behavior, our relation with other people. Now, this actually became very much expedient, very much necessary, especially since the time we start living in groups. So, when group living actually started, then we also felt this compulsion to come out with some basic rules of governing ourselves. Okay, and you must be knowing that this group living actually started with the invention of agriculture. And when we started living in the groups, we needed to have certain principles, certain rules in order to regulate our conduct, in order to shape our behavior, which maximizes our cooperation and benefit, a mutual benefit in any society. Now, all that will require established system. Okay, it will require tools so that we could regulate our behavior, our conduct with each other. And that is something which is the job of any political organization. So, for example, you can say that why do we need the government? Okay, what is the role of the government? Imagine this very Indian society without Indian government. There, you will straight away realize the importance of the political organization in form of the government that we have. It is actually, you can say, the spine of this very state. Indian government is going to be the spine of very Indian state. In that sense, it comes out with all the nitty-gritties, all the rules, principles, regulations, which makes the conduct, behavior of people livable. Okay, it is only because of the rules and regulations that government comes out with, we as society are able to run ourselves, govern ourselves. Okay, in a better way. So the group living started, or it actually became the factor in propelling the people to come out or to experiment with different political organizations. Now, why they were doing such kind of experiments, or why they were coming out with different forms and different kinds of political organizations at different times. Okay, why this was happening? You will realize that the very basic reason, or the most important reason behind this kind of experiment, or behind this kind of motivation to experiment with different political organization, was to find or to have the better alternative of whatever political order they were having, okay, at that moment. So the quest here, actually the urge here is to find out the better alternative to govern ourselves. That is going to come only with a better alternative in form of a political order, which is going to serve people in a better way. And in the journey of this very experiments, okay, in the course of this very experiments, we actually came out, humanity actually came out with different kinds of political organization. And here I'm saying that it is the monarchy which actually is the first established political order, a systematic political order in line of those very experiments. Although before monarchy also there were various political organizations, various political orders, but this was the most systematic or most organized kind of political order. Okay, in line of those experiments that we carried out throughout the course of our history of humanity. Now, this very institution of monarchy was actually pan-global, both in ancient as well as medieval times. All the exact details of the monarchical system in different parts of the world differed. Okay, many a times there was uh, a great deal of difference between one monarchical system, say for example in Asia, when you compare it with any monarchical system that you had in ancient Roman civilization, for example. But still, different kind of monarchies at different time flourished in different parts of the world, and they were actually the first in line of those experiments that humanity carried out in order to make their state of affairs better. by using any particular political order. Okay, now these experiments or this very attempt to bring out a better political order, political organization, is being carried out from the ancient times. Okay, and in line with those experiments, you will realize that in ancient times, it is the Greek civilization which was at the forefront of it. It was this civilization was actually uh, one very important civilization in the sense that it actually carried out with so many experiments and came out with so many political orders that it was having various kinds of political orders in its civilization at the same time. For example, it had democracy, then it also had oligarchy, it had republicanism, then aristocracy, all these kind and other types of political orders were actually present in different Greek city-states at the same time. Okay, so for example, one Greek city-state was having democracy, the other was having oligarchy, then the other was having republicanism. And this is very evident when you study the thinkers like Aristotle. Okay, so he carried out a study of different constitutions which were present in his times, and that number of those very constitutions goes to 158. So this number actually shows the sheer larges or the sheer larges of the experiments which were being carried out at that time with regard to the political order or with regard to the quest for finding out better alternative in form of different political order. And Aristotle actually carried out a deep analysis of these very political systems. That is something that we are going to study under Aristotle. But here we are just interested in knowing or contextualizing the meaning of Western political thought and political thought. Okay, getting it? So, what I mean to say here is this, that the Western political thought, any political thought that we are going to study, the subject matter there is actually something which is the result of the experiments that humanity has been carrying out since the ancient times. And the very motive of this very experiment or the series of experiment was this, that is to have a better alternative of the political order of people that they had at any moment of time. And why they had this very kind of quest, that is to find the better alternative of political order, only because they were also trying to reform the way the people were being governed at different point of times. So monarchy served a purpose of certain people at certain age, but it did not actually serve all the purpose that arose or all the necessities that were actually felt by different societies at different times. And that is why we see transition from monarchical form of government to republican form of government. Now again recall that it is not just about Western political thought. If it is the subject matter, or it has been the subject matter of ancient Greek civilization, then you also find the similar kind of experiments taking place in ancient India also. Okay, so here you have 16 Janpadas, and many of the Mahajanpadas were actually republics. Okay, getting it? So many of the Mahajanpadas were actually republics here also. So you will find that kind of experiments in Indian society also. Okay, now see the next thing here. How do we define political thought? What constitutes actually political thought, or what is simply political thought? In order to answer this question, you can say that in at the most basic level, these are going to be just ideas, or the political ideas more precisely, of the political philosophers. So what is political thought? It is simply the political ideas of political philosophers. Okay, now who are the political philosophers? You must have heard about philosophers, but who are political philosophers? Or all the is it necessary that all philosophers are going to be political philosophers also? No. Political philosophers are those who are going to philosophize with something which is related to politics. So they are going to philosophize about political events, political activity, political processes. Okay, and we are concerned about the political ideas of those very philosophers who philosophize on political processes, political events, political activity. Okay, so that is the simple definition, or that is what we simply mean by this very term, that is political thought. It is simply the description of the political ideas of various political philosophers. Getting it? Now, what else it does? You will realize that while we will start studying about the Western political thought, then we will carry out the study of Plato, Aristotle, and then we will move towards other political philosophers like Machiavelli and Hobbes. There you will see that Western political thought actually is going to recognize, or is going to come out with certain norms and values. Okay, norms and values. It is going to identify certain norms and values, and then again it is going to link those values with the political processes. Okay, now it might seem difficult at this very age, at this very time, but you can simply understand it like this. So, for example, if you take the example of Plato, say, okay, or Aristotle, these are ancient Greek thinkers. So they identified certain values. Values, for example, that in very simple terms, you can say, for example, they thought about good governance. Okay, we're just taking some examples. So this becomes a value here. Good governance becomes a value, or good governance becomes their ideal. And now they are going to relate it or link them, these values, with political processes or political activities. For example, how rulers are going to conduct the state of affairs in order to deliver good governance in the society, okay, or in polity. So, for example, various political thinkers will come out with different values. For example, liberty. So, for a section of political thinkers, liberty may be of utmost importance. Liberty as a value may be of utmost importance, and they are going to link that very value with the political process. That is to say that they are going to link the value of liberty with the political behavior and the political practices that the state or parliament or the government needs to carry out. Okay, so they are going to test the public policy by having the lens of this value. So they are going to see or they are going to judge public policies by analyzing that to what extent they are delivering in front of, or when it comes to the liberty of the people, how they are ensuring the liberty of the people. All that is going to be the subject matter here. Okay, now if political thought is something which describes the political ideas of political philosophers, and then you came to know that it also identifies the norms and values which and ultimately links them with political processes, then it is quite evident, even at this very stage, that these norms and values, or the identification of norms and values, are going to be different in different ages and different geography. So, for example, as we have in our syllabus, the Western political thought, you will come to see that when we start studying it, Western political thought actually identifies the values which were different from the values identified by, say, for example, Indian political thought. So, what are the basic values of Western political thought? Okay, which values or which set of values were identified by Western political thought? There you see that the values identified or values acknowledged by the Western political thought were like liberty, okay, then democracy, right from the beginning of the time, okay, beginning of the political philosophizing, democracy has been one value, okay, one of the normative concept also. Then value of equality, value of justice, all these are the values which were identified by the Western political thought. Okay, What is the meaning of identification here? Identification here means that the political thinkers of this very tradition actually reflected upon these very values. Okay, they considered them very important. They also made them a kind of criteria to judge the ability of any administration or political order. So whenever they classified political order, they checked or they judged the efficacy or the usefulness of those very political order by analyzing that to what extent they are able to deliver these kind of norms and values. Okay. Similarly, when you analyze Indian political thought, when you will study about Indian political thought, by contrast to Western political thought, the values acknowledged, identified by the Indian political thought were different. Here, we, uh, as an Indian society, reflected more on spiritual and moral values. Okay, so you find a great deal of spiritual and moral values of the society. And again, these values are not to be adjusted, just are not to be found just at the level of individual, but here a great deal of community or the importance of community has been highlighted in Indian political thought. Okay, so how that is different, we are all going to learn about that in our upcoming lectures. In the initial stage, you might find it completely new, or you might find it completely different. All the terms that Many of the terms that are being used here, that is also may be completely new to you, but just follow 8 to 10 lectures, and then you will be familiar with these very topics, these very words. Okay, it is going to be slightly tough only in the initial stage. Once you are comfortable with the basic terms that we actually use very frequently, then it is all going to be very easy. Okay, so Indian political thought actually emphasized the moral and spiritual values. Okay, it also emphasized the importance of cooperation among individuals in community, because it is mainly the living, it is mainly the community living that has been practiced in India. Okay, and by community living, I mean that when it comes to the importance that has to be given to individual or community, it is a community which always trumps over individual in our case, or it has been the case throughout the history of Indian civilization. Now, other values that have been identified and reflected upon by the Indian political thinkers is dharma or dharma of Raj. Okay, what is dharma of Raj? You must have heard about like Ram Raj. Okay, what is that Ram Raj? It is actually a rule well governed by a rule which is virtuous to the people. Okay, so dharma of Raj means what is actually the duty of the people uh, who are the members of ruling class. So what is their dharma? What is their duty? What is the correct way to govern? How people are to be governed? What is the best way to govern the people? Okay, and now it is not just about the rulers. What should be the virtues of praja? Okay, and ultimately all that is to be done for the welfare of praja. So what is the uh, duty of the ruler? Then what are the virtues of raja? How raja should conduct himself? Okay, how he should consider the welfare of praja to be of utmost importance. Okay, he should not be selfish. He should not uh, he should not actually involve in indulgences. Okay, he should not indulge in extravagances. All those kind of virtues are there in Indian philosophy or Indian political thought. Okay, now political thought is actually also going to be about the study, or more precisely, the comparative study of different political theories. Getting it? So it is going to involve the study or the comparative study of political theories also. Okay, and as we just saw that here we are going to have different traditions also. So there is Western political thought, Indian political thought, Chinese political thought. You have Arab political thought also, or African political thought is also there, that relates to the most primitive societies that we find in medieval ancient medieval Africa. Even today, many of the societies are actually primitive there. So that is why we find different kinds of traditions in Western in political thought. So in this very first chapter, the first topic that we are going to take, we are going to be interested in studying about Western political thought, or the political thought of Western tradition. Okay. Now, political thought is also going to be the study of a state. When I was discussing the syllabus, I told you that state is the very important concept in the discipline of political science. You also will see that some scholars have actually went on to say that political science starts and ends with the state. I also told you that some consider it to be the very keystone of the architecture that we have in the form of political science. So it is a very important concept. And I told you that it exists only in abstract form. Okay, we do not find the physical form of a state anywhere. It exists only in abstract form, that is, exists only in form of idea. Okay, it is not something which we can see in physical form, as is the case, for example, with government or police or military or judiciary. All that is visible in physical form, but state is an abstract notion. Okay, now we are not just concerned about the study of a state, we are also concerned about those factors which influence the working of a state. Okay, its functioning. Okay, so as I said that we also are interested in knowing all about all those factors which influence the working of the state. Okay, and that is why it is also going to include other things, for example, society, economy, public policy. Okay, and many other things, because we are also going to be interested in every single factor that is going to affect the working of the state. Society, by all means, is going to affect the working of the state, or society casts an influence on the state. Same is the thing with economics and public policy. Okay, although I understand that at this very moment you might find all these very discussions difficult or slightly complex to understand. It is just because you are not familiar with the most basic concepts. Here I do not expect you to actually be able to understand every single thing that I'm stating, or every single statement that I'm uttering. I just want you to concentrate for the next 5 6 classes, and then it will be very easy for you. Okay, now what else political thought is actually is interested about? So here you find that it is concerned also with the most basic ethical questions and attempts to answer them. Basic ethical questions, and here ethical does not mean its literal meaning. The most basic ethical questions means that what is the best form of government? Here you have this very question, for example, what is the best form of government? See, again, this is not something different. This should be seen in line with that same underlying quest which propelled humanity to find other better alternatives of political order. It is actually this kind of motivation for finding out the answer of this very thing, this very question, that is, what is the better form of government, or what is the best form of government? Okay, what is the better form of government than the government that we are having? Okay, we are actually interesting in knowing about the most ideal form of government. We have such kind of quest, and that actually becomes the matter or the topic under political thought. Getting it? So here you will have the most basic questions, and if we obey the government, then why should actually be obeying the government? What is the basis of such obligation? Okay, so what is the basis of such obligation? That is the subject matter of political thought. And what is the extent of such obligation? That is also becoming that is also the topic of Western political thought and other political thought also. Okay, the political thought of various traditions have actually dwelt on this very fact, that what is the extent of the obligation. For example, generally it is believed in our society that government's rules and regulations should be obeyed. But if government indulges in some wrongdoing, or it loses the legitimacy to rule, then are we still obliged by the rules and regulations of the government? That is something that you can answer very easily. That once the government loses the legitimacy, then we are actually not under any obligation to follow the rules and regulations of the government. Now, this very issue is not resolved just by uttering the word legitimacy here. What makes any government a legitimate government? What is the basis of legitimacy? Again, what is the extent of that legitimacy? And at what point any government comes to lose that legitimacy? All that becomes the subject matter of political thought. Okay, now these are something that we are going to study. These are the questions that we are going to uh, find in the writings of the uh, political thinkers. And that is why we are actually interested, or it becomes incumbent upon us to study the classics. Okay, so for example, what is the meaning of classic here? That is the study of the work of the main political thinkers that we have. For example, the work of Plato. So we are going to study Republic. Although in this very course that we have for PSIR, for Political Science and International Relations for UPSC Civil Service examination, we are not going to study the Republic per se, but we are going to study about the ideas that have been discussed by Plato in his book, The Republic. Okay, so those are the classics that we have. So, Republic by Plato, Laws by Plato, Statesman by Plato, then Ethics and Politics by Aristotle, then The Prince by Machiavelli. All these books are actually called classics, and the study of these classics becomes important, or it becomes necessary only because of the basic questions that we classics are putting before us. Okay, now these are the questions which are actually eternal in the political thinking. They were raised by the most ancient of the thinkers that we have in political science, but still the refinement of the answers which have been given by different thinkers of different times is an ongoing process. Okay, so we are still refining our answer when it comes to the question like what is the best form of government. You can say that this is a democracy, or democracy is the best form of government. Others might not agree with this very view, that democracy actually is is something which delays the most necessary reforms which need to be brought about in any society. Or one might say that democracy themselves can be of various kinds. There are representative democracy, then there are deliberative democracies. Which kind of democracy precisely is the best form of government? Or then we have parliamentary system also. Then republican system is also there, and you find democracy in both the systems. Then which system is better? Or it is something that is going to be decided by the local situation or the geography or the region. Okay, so these are the answers that actually we are still debating, and that is why it is being said that the study of the classics becoming important because of the most basic questions that they raise. Although the questions that thinkers provide in those very questions, in those very writings, might be something that you do not agree with, but but still the questions are actually very basic and they need to be answered. Okay, now it is also said that political science is very much related with the discipline of history, or history as such. It is also claimed that political science is the fruit. Okay, so political science is claimed to be the fruit. Then what is history? History is said to be the root. Okay, what is being claimed here is that political thought might be related to politics, but the foundation of political thought is actually the history. It is actually history which is going to give fodder to the thinker, in which he is going to reflect upon. and then come with his own explanation or his own theory. Getting it? Now, again, you must have heard something like this, that every political thinker is the product of his own times. That means what? That every thinker, whenever he starts philosophizing or he starts analyzing any particular activity, it is seen that those particular philosophy, those particular explanation or theory is actually affected by the local conditions surrounding the thinker there. Getting it? So that is why it is said that the political thought actually needs to be understood by taking into account the historical factor surrounding the thinker and the philosophy of that particular time. That is why we need to actually contextualize the political thought for their proper understanding and for their proper study. That is what we mean by saying that political thought needs to be put into a historical context for their complete understanding. Okay, a historical context is always relevant. So, for example, when Plato comes out with his theory of, say, for example, communism of family, where he proposes the communism of family, that is property and wives, then it is to be seen that what are the conditions or what were the conditions that were prevailing in his times in his city state, that is Athens, that propelled him to come out with this kind of extreme philosophy or extreme solution, that is the communism of family property, including communism of wives. Okay, so that is what we are going to start do here. We are going to be interested in political thought, and but for their proper understanding, we are also going to contextualize them in history. Getting it? Now, Western political thought, for the same reason, is also based on history, and this is something which is actually the view of those scholars who belong to the historical approach of political theory. So, in political theory, in last class, I have told you that we are going to study about different approaches. So, Sabine is one professor, one scholar who belongs to the historical approach, and there you will see that he emphasizes on the importance of history. Okay, and he also goes on to say that Western political thought is actually based on history. And this history does not end or does not have any concluding chapter, means it is an ongoing process. So still, although you had uh, thinkers like Plato and Aristotle in the era before Christ, but that kind of tradition has been carried out, okay, till this very century. And we have seen the emergence of these very philosophies in the writings of, say, for example, John Rawls and Hannah Arendt. Okay, so this is an ongoing process. The subject matter, the very foundation of that political thought might be history, or history is something that might inspire the philosopher to philosophize on any particular political activity or political behavior. But the history is not actually confined or is not going to end by the period that we have in the classification of history, that is ancient, medieval, or modern. It is an ongoing process. That history does not have any concluding chapter. That means that it is an ongoing phenomena. Okay. Now, when we start studying about the political thinkers, the Western political thought, we are also going to see the two clear-cut divisions here. That is political idealism and political realism. And you will be able to see easily that how easily we are going to fit or we are going to assign this particular division to different political philosophers. So we will be saying that Plato belongs to the school of political idealism and Aristotle belongs to the school of political realism. So what makes these very thinkers uh, political idealist or political realist? What makes Plato a political idealist? Uh, then we understand that political idealism must mean something which we actually find in the thinking and the work of Plato. So, political idealism, actually, in the most simple terms, means that here the thinker or those thinkers who are actually political idealist or idealist are interested or more interested in ideas, okay, rather than facts. Getting it? So they are going to philosophize about ideas. Many a times it may seem that they are actually not touching the ground reality. They are not testing their ideas, their validity in actual practical conditions. And it is also seen that political idealists are actually the thinkers who tend to come out with their own ideal version of everything. So they will be coming out with ideal version of a state or the ideal state, okay, ideal form of justice, ideal justice. All those are actually going to be the concerns of the political idealist. Okay, now political realists, on the other hand, are more interested in the practical aspect of the uh, political philosophy and political thought. So they are going to talk in concrete terms. So, for example, Aristotle is not actually concerned with the most ideal version of a state. Okay, although he comes out with his idea of the best form of political order, and he suggests it to be the polity, which is actually different from democracy, the word that he actually uses with negative connotation. But still, he is not actually so much interested in knowing the most ideal version of a state or the most ideal version of justice. He is interested more in terms of most workable, most functionable version of justice or most functional version of a state. Okay, so he's more interested in facts or in practical application of the ideas rather than the ideas themselves. You will also see that those political idealists who philosophize, especially in the terrain of ideas, tended to have this very motivation, or they have this very tendency to come out with their utopia. Okay, so Plato comes out with ideal state and the institution of philosophy, and that ideal state of Plato's ideal state actually has been criticized to be the utopia. Similarly, Marx as a political thinker also talked about communism, and his idea of communism, as you will see when we will study Marx, is also utopian in many sense. Okay, while thinkers like uh, Machiavelli and Aristotle, okay, these thinkers are not going to dwell much on ideas. They are going to focus on practical application of ideas or the practical reality or something which in a most concrete way very much applicable by the political representatives or by those people who belong to the ruling class. Okay, now it is also claimed that when we see the development of political thought, then it follows a certain course of journey which can be recognized in a manner where it has developed in a very definite way, and a kind of pattern is actually you can draw here. So what happens here that a political philosopher he comes out with his theories. Okay, and now those theories, those philosophies, the political philosophies are going to be questioned by another political philosopher of the next generation. Okay, so here we see the development of political thought from this political thinker making a transition to this very political thinker. The thinkers of latter generation are going to question the premises and the philosophies of the previous generation's political thinking, and again are in turn going to be criticized by the political philosophers of next generation. So this is the kind of journey that has been there if you analyze the development of political thought, okay, in almost all the traditions of the world. Okay, so for example, when it comes to Western political thought, you will see that Plato came out with his theory. Okay, now Plato's disciple Aristotle is going to question many of those premises of Plato and will come out with his own theory. Later, you will see that with the coming of Hobbes, Locke, the premises of Aristotle also are going to be challenged. And then we will in this fashion we are going to see the development of the Western political thought. Okay, and the subject matter as a discipline. Getting it? So this is the typical way that is being talked about here. This is actually the typical pattern that has been followed so far as the development of the tradition of Western political thought is concerned. This has been the trend in other political tradition also. Okay, so the thinking, the conclusions, the theory, the explanations of a political thinker of any particular generation is questioned by the by the political thinker of another generation or the next generation, and in such manner, political thought actually develops. So, for example, in case of Plato, you will see that he comes out with his theory of justice, where uh, where theory of justice says that uh, it is actually concerned with two things, that is proper stationing and non-interference. Again, you may find these very terms difficult only because you don't know about it. I'm just using it to make a point here, although you're going to study all these things in detail in my lecture on Plato. Now, this very notions of justice does not involve anything with regard to the enjoyment of rights, for example, or his idea of communism, where he demands from the guardian class to give away or give up their property, not to have any family. All these premises are going to be questioned by Aristotle, are actually going to be vehemently denied by Aristotle to be of any significance. Okay, so those things are going to be found, or this typical method is going to be observed when we will study about the development of political thought. Getting it? Now, Sabine also says that uh, whenever whenever an attempt is made by any political thinker to come out with any political thought, then, as has been the case with other aspects of political activity or political philosophy or political theory, it actually tries to explain the meaning or try to make sense of any political practice. While explaining or while making sense of any political practice or political event, political thought actually many times unwittingly and unwillingly also comes out with the norms and values. And that is why, in that very moment of time, it becomes normative. Normative in the sense that it is also going to prescribe about what actually should be the condition rather than is what it is at the present time. In that sense, it becomes normative. So, while describing about any particular practice, or while making sense or explaining about any particular political activity, political thought also comes out with this very suggestion that what kind of practice should look or should be conducted at what manner, in which manner. So what it actually should be, rather than just confining itself with the meaning of the political practice. And it is claimed by Savine at this very moment that when political thought attempts to actually come out with the suggestion, the norms also, that what political practice should actually be, then in that very moment it has the potential to actually alter what is actually prevailing at that particular moment. Now, this again might be slightly difficult to understand, but understand that, for example, you have different tools in order to understand and analyze the political order which is prevalent in many parts of the globe. So, for example, you have this very legal juridical approach to understand or analyze the constitution of different countries. Okay, so political thought, while actually employing this kind of approach, is going to study, say, for example, the Constitution of United States, and will analyze all the nitty-gritties, all the details involved in the presidential system. in that very attempt or in that very movement, what political theory is doing is that it is trying to explain the presidential form of government or any particular facet of that particular form of government, that particular form of political order. Now, while doing so, it is very easy to understand that political thought, political practice of political tradition will be tempted or most likely is going to come with the suggestion also that what should actually be the case. Now you must be able to understand the point here that while telling or while describing about any political practice, okay, what does it mean? Political thought also has the ability, or political theory also has the ability to change it. Okay, because political theory is explaining, and that is what we are saying, that it is explaining what is. Okay, now while suggesting or while going for it, it also comes out with its own suggestion, that is what should be. Okay, and while attempting these kind of venture, it is seen, according to Sabine, that political theory can alter what is. That is what we mean by this very statement. Okay, even if it is looking tough at this very stage, believe me, all that is going to be something which will become common sense to you if you pay proper attention to all the lectures. Now, the next thing here, that the great tradition of Western political theory from Plato to Marx and continuing with the contemporary political thinkers deal with the dimensions and contradictions of political process. Definitely, because we are going to start with Plato and then we are going to have discussion of Aristotle, Machiavelli, Hobbes, Locke, then J.S. Mill. Okay, after then Marx, and then we are going to cover Gramsci and Arendt, and this is an ongoing tradition. So they are going to deal with various dimensions and contradictions of political process. Now those dimensions are varied and contradictions are also there. So we are going to see that. Now study this. Uh, Please concentrate on this very aspect because this is important. Now it is being claimed, or it has been claimed by various scholars, that every political thinker is the child of his own times, or is the product of his own times. Okay, so for example, Dunning, in one instance, says this about Machiavelli, that the brilliant Florentine was actually the product of his own times. But this is not just about Machiavelli. Every political thinker is the product of his own times. What do we mean by the product of his own times? It just means that the thinking process, the thought that any political thinker came out with is the product of the circumstances that prevailed during that era. Okay, during the era of that political thinker. So, for example, when Plato came out with the solution of communism of property and family, he was dealing with certain problems which were affecting his Greek city state, that is Athens, and he came out with his own solutions. Similarly, Machiavelli also came out with so many advices for the princes that we are going to study in the chapter that we have under Western political thought, that is Machiavelli. Marx, when Marx was theorizing about all these political activities and political phenomena processes, he was actually facing the problem where a large chunk of the population was living uh, in abject poverty, and most of the resources and the fruits of the growth, the economic growth, were actually being appropriated by the industrialist of the society, industrialist in the economy. So he came out with his own solution of by suggesting the workers of the world to unite and take control over the state apparatus. Because in his analysis, it is only by controlling the state, the industrialist, the bourgeois class is able to wield the power over proletariat, that is the working class, and is able to control everything. Okay, we are going to see the details in the respective chapter. Now, what I mean to say here is this, that every political thinker, when you will study, seems to be resolving or seems to be concerned about the problems of his own times. Okay, so why they are relevant even at present day, or why they are relevant even today? This is so because although they were concerned about the problems of their times, okay, the problems which they faced in that era, or the kind of theoretical framework, the kind of analysis that they adopted for the resolution of those very problems, that actually is going to be very useful even for us at present time. Okay, so the framework of analysis that they adopt, that is going to be useful even for today. We may not be adopting the solutions that they offered, but we are going to utilize the theoretical framework, the framework of analysis that they adopted to resolve the problems of their time. And that is why it is being claimed that even though they are the product of their times, every thinker is the product of his own time. But most of the thinkers that we are going to study there, here in our course, actually transcend their localism. This is what we mean by this very point here. Okay, so these 2 points means that although the thinkers were actually concerned about the problems of their time, but the kind of approach they adopted to solve or resolve the problem of their time, that is going to be useful even today. Okay, and that is something which makes them relevant even today. And that is what we mean when we say that they transcend their localism. So those theoretical framework, those insights into into the resolution of the problem is actually something which transcends the localism. It is suitable cutting across time and space. Okay, so it is suitable in every time or in every time and in every geography. Getting it? So now with a good background of the question that what is political thought and then what are the different traditions of political thought, we can move towards this particular tradition of political thought, that is Western political thought. Okay, now under Western political thought, we are going to be interested in the study of these three political thinkers. Okay, at the first place. So the first is Socrates, the second is Plato, and third is Aristotle. Although in the syllabus you have seen that after Aristotle you have to study Machiavelli, then Hobbes, Locke, J.S. Mill, and many others. But we are going to see them primarily uh, in our course, okay, especially in first 2 3 lectures. And these are going to be very important lectures because the thing that you will learn here is going to be the base, okay, of the upcoming lectures. So you should pay full attention to these lectures these 2 3 lectures that I'm going to have. Now, the most important facts about these very philosophers is to be known first. This one is Socrates. Okay, he was the master of Plato, and Plato was the master of Aristotle. So Plato was the disciple of Socrates, and Aristotle was the disciple of Plato. So we are seeing the three generations of political thinkers here. Okay, so first of all, we are going to know about Socrates. But the problem with Socrates is that he did not write anything on his own. The only source through which we come to know about the thinking, okay, of Socrates is Plato. So it is only through Plato's work that we come to know about Socrates. So Plato, in his most famous book, The Republic, which is in form of the dialogue, okay, there he discusses the dialogue between Socrates and other people. Some historians have also suggested that Socrates was actually the imagination of Plato. This person actually did not exist. He existed only in the imagination of Plato. Although this is something that we cannot actually verify, So leaving that particular thing aside, the thing that we actually know at present time and which is useful for our lectures for our course is this, that Plato was the disciple of Socrates, and the kind of analysis, the kind of dialogue, the method of dialectics that he's going to adopt in his writings are actually developed by Socrates. Okay, so the dialogue form of inquiry was something which was given by Socrates. So he used to wander in the cities talking with the different people, especially to those people who were claimed to be knowledgeable in Greek city states. So what he will do, that Socrates will approach to these people and he will ask certain basic questions. So for example, he will raise simple question that what is justice? Okay. The other person will come out with his answers, and then Socrates will inquire the statement or the answer and will come out with any kind of discrepancy in that very statement or in that very answer which was given to him. And then he will expose the lacunas in that very statement, the discrepancies there. And this way, he will make the other person realize that he actually does not know anything about justice. Okay, so for majority of the thinkers or the educators and the philosopher of his times, it was very frustrating. Okay, it was very irritating actually what Socrates was doing. But this method of dialectics, of inquiring their statements by cross questioning them, with the only intention to come out with the ultimate truth, was something which was adopted by Plato in almost all of his writings. Okay, so this is something that you needed to know first. So when we see the relation between Socrates and Plato, it is a very cordial one. I'm talking about the intellectual relationship. Okay, Plato as a disciple adopted everything that Socrates had to offer. Okay, and he adopted all those teachings in its most original form that you will be seeing here. So, for example, Socrates' theory of knowledge is something which you will find or you will see in Plato's theory of forms. So, they are so similar. We are going to study that in our course. They are so similar with each other that one can understand theory of knowledge by understanding the theory of forms offered by Plato. So, theory of knowledge was given by Socrates, and theory of forms was given by Plato. The essence of both the things is actually same. Okay, so if you understand theory of knowledge of Socrates, you will understand the theory of forms by Plato. So this shows that the congruence that existed between the mentality, the intellectual style or the style of inquiry between these two people, these two thinkers. But when it comes to master-disciple relationship between Plato and Aristotle, this is completely different from that we see in case of Socrates and Plato. So in Aristotle, you will find that he emerges as one of the critic or the more staunchest, one of the staunchest critic of Plato. Okay, so whatever Plato said, for example, his assertion of ideal state or his interest in developing or coming out with the most ideal state, his uh, assertion again for the institution of philosopher king, his theory of justice, all those things are going to be criticized, okay, in the most vehement manner by his own disciple, that is Aristotle. So the method of inquiry here again is going to change. Okay, so from Plato, Aristotle is going to learn everything in his initial stage, but after that, he is going to develop certain methodologies, certain style of inquiry, which gives results, which gives conclusions which are drastically opposite to that of Plato. Getting it? Although the kind of inquiry which is common to all these thinkers is something that you can say that dialectics, the method of dialectics. This kind of inquiry or this method of inquiry is common to all these three. Nonetheless, Aristotle, uh, Aristotle's writings actually have a lot of imprint or effect of Plato. So many of the scholars have actually opined that it is not the criticism of Plato which is dominant in Aristotle. It is actually all the things that actually Aristotle has responded to by criticizing Plato is the further development of the theory which is given by Plato. See, this is the story that I'm giving you only to give you the context here, because everything that is being said here is going to be most understandable or most comprehensible only when we are going to see the details. What I mean to say here is that these three people are to be studied in good detail in the next 2-3 lectures, and that is why you need to know about them. I will also suggest you to Google about these people. Okay, so you will find certain information which is factual, which is going to be useful. Now, coming to our first uh, Western political thinker, that is Plato. Now, this very political thinker is going to be very interesting because when we will study about other political thinkers, they are just straightforward. They are really political thinkers, but here we are dealing with someone who is who is more of a mystic rather than a philosopher. So he is a kind of mystical philosopher, you can say. Many of the ideas are actually out of the world, out of this world. You will see that his imagination has no bound, no limitations. He talks about the very real things that he see around him, but he uses the analogies, the conceptual framework, which is completely out of this world. Okay, so here you are going to, or you are required to pay full attention, because otherwise this is going to be difficult. Okay, now in order to study about any political thinker, first you need to understand about the space and time of the thing. Getting it? Because as I said in my previous lecture, also in this lecture, that every political thinker is a child of his own times or is a product of his own times. So whatever he's thinking, whatever thoughts he's having, or whatever explanation he's coming out with for any political activity or political event, all that is completely comprehensible only when we see the time frame of that political thinker. So that is going to be very important for every political thinker. Then we are also going to see what are the influences on the thinker. Okay. So for example, when Plato is coming out with his theory of forms, okay, or theory of ideas, then he is influenced by which thinker? Okay. Now, when he talks about theory of communism, then is it just the original thinking that is coming out with, or again there is a kind of influence which has been cast upon him by any other political thinker? Okay, so influences on thinker is very important. Okay, so for example, one of the most profound influence on Aristotle or the writings of Aristotle has been the Plato himself. So Plato himself was the most profound influence when it came to Aristotle. And that is why in order to understand Aristotle, we need to understand Plato also. Getting it? But we are not just going to study about every political thinker or any thinker that has influenced the thinker that we have to study. We are just going to be interested about those very aspects which are going to be useful for our syllabus. Okay, so here we are not going to study the Pythagoras in detail or Heraclitus in detail or Parmenides or Socrates. We are going to study a little bit about Socrates. Getting it? Because that is going to be relevant. Then comes the methodology adopted by different thinkers. Different thinkers adopt different methodology. So we are going to study about that methodology also. So for example, I told you about the dialectics. Okay. So there are various kinds of dialectics. The kind of dialectics that developed in latter part of the medieval history of political thought, that is different. The kind of dialectics that was adopted by the Marxist scholar, that was different. Okay, But this kind of dialectics that we are talking about here is different, as I just discussed, that it is a method of inquiry by countering the claims of others. Okay. Then there is deduction. We are going to see what is deduction, the method of deduction. Then what is teleological method. We are going to see all that. Then analogy, the same English word that you know about. Okay. So various thinkers also adopt the method of analogy to explain any particular thing. We are going to see about the application of these very methods in the thinking of this particular philosopher, that is Plato. Then next important thing about any particular philosopher is the perspective that he adopts. Okay, the school of thought that he's coming out with, from which he's coming. So here Plato comes from school of idealism. So he's also called the father of political idealism. I explained that idealism is something where if any political thinker belongs to this school of thought, you will see him more interested more in the realm of ideas rather than in any practical aspects of practical reality of his times. Okay, the thinkers belonging to this school of idealism will also be interested very much in coming out with the most ideal version of living, ideal version of a state, ideal version of rule, ideal version of political order. And that is why I told you this, they have this very tendency to come out with their own utopia, the most ideal condition imaginable. Okay, so you will also see Plato coming out with his own utopia of ideal state. But there you will also analyze whether that particular ideal state that Plato is actually imagining is actually a utopia or not. Okay, then we are also going to see that what are the important works of Plato. So here the important works of Plato are the Republic, Crito, Apology, Statesman, and Laws. Okay, and here we are going to see that what are the main ideas of the Republic, the main ideas of Apology, Crito, Statesman. Although in our syllabus it is mainly the Republic, Statesman, and Laws. Okay, in other works are not important so far as the political philosophy is concerned, or political thought is concerned. Now, the Republic, the Statesmen, and Laws are Plato's major works, and that is why we are going to focus, because here we find the discussion on political philosophy, political thought. Now, as I told you, that all these thinkers are actually the political thinkers also. Okay, so all these thinkers, I'm sorry, are actually the philosophers, but we are interested only about the political philosophy or their political thought. So even when Plato has given many theories, many ideas, he's talked uh, in length about so many other things, but we are just interested in his political thought. That is why we are going to see his theory of ideas. Although this is not political, this is more philosophical than political, but even then, in order to understand his other ideas, other theories, we need to understand this very idea. Then theory of justice, theory of education, and finally the communism of family and property. Then we are going to end our discussion with evaluation and criticism of that particular thinker. Okay, so after discussing all the ideas of political thinker, we are going to evaluate those political ideas, those theories, and then there only we will see the opinions of other political scholars, other scholars of the uh, political science, what they have got to say about these particular philosophers. So this was the most basic thing about the syllabus, about the way that we are going to study uh, political philosophy and political thought, and how we are going to, what approach we are going to adopt in order to study political science. From the very next lecture, I am actually starting the course on Western political thought. Okay. So this was all about this very lecture. Now, if you subscribe for any course, if you use this very code, that is Amit PS, you will get 10% discount. Getting it? Be ready for my next lecture, because there I will start Plato, and that is actually related completely with the syllabus that we have for PSIR in UPSC. And now my main course on political science starts. This till this point it was just the preparatory stage. Okay, I was just preparing you by giving you the idea about the syllabus, about the requirement of this very optional, what we are required to do here. Sorry. And then how we are going to study what we have got to study in political science. Thank you.